Hello, today we are going to learn how to rig up and animate a Lego F-14 Tomcat in Blender. Um, this tutorial assumes you have a basic understanding of the Blender workspace and how you generally navigate through its features and whatnot. So if you're a complete beginner, there's other tutorials out there that will get you up to speed. So maybe look at those and then come back here. Another thing to note is this method of rigging the Tomcat up is very much like a quick, dirty, easy way of doing it. There's probably better ways of doing it. So if you have a better way of doing it, feel free to use that. So let's jump right in. First thing you're going to want to do is download the files that I have linked in the description of this video. So if you go up to my Gumroad, you can download the asset in there. I have listed it for $2 because I I want to feed my habit of buying Lego pieces and building the things I design. But if you're not in a position to pay for it, just DM me, drop a comment or something, and I'll give you the files for free. So yeah, it's no big deal. So once you download those files, let's go ahead and import them into our scene. So we're going to import an OBJ. Um, I believe it's over here, Blender asset. So you're gonna see just an OBJ file, but when you download it, there's gonna be a material file as well. And make sure you have the material file in the same directory so that the textures come in. So let's open up our OBJ file, and you can see it's massive, and we wanna move that over to the middle of our scene. So I'm gonna get rid of this default cube, which I should have done earlier, but I didn't. So the first thing we're gonna do is scale this down. I'm gonna scale it down until it's somewhat manageable in my scene. Um, And let's go ahead and do that. Let's make it a little bit smaller. All right. So you might be wondering why all of this is one single object. And the reason for that is when you import these types of files into Lego or into Blender, I don't know why, but I've noticed that sometimes the textures get all weird. And the way to fix that is just go over here to the uh, object data properties and turn off auto smooth for normals. So it didn't really make a difference here, but sometimes I've noticed that certain faces will just be completely black. They won't have any texture on them unless you turn this off. So make sure auto smooth is turned off, and you want to do it for all the objects. So I'm going to do it now before I go ahead and separate them. All right, so that's a good segue into our next step. We want to separate the wings and the stabilizers and everything from the main body. So what I'm going to do is go into this top-down view because it's a little easier to see. And I'm going to go into wireframe mode, and I'm going to go into edit mode. In edit mode and wireframe mode, go into face select. So you can either do that by hitting 3 on the numpad on the above the QWERTY keypad thingy, or you can just touch the or click on this thing over here. So once you're in face select, go ahead and just select. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. I want box select. Yeah, go ahead and select the component, and because you're in wireframe mode, it's going to select all the faces on the other side as well. That's why we're in wireframe mode. Right click and separate by selection. Once you do that, go ahead and click on the other ones, separate by selection, and just rinse repeat this process for the two wings. Let's go ahead and do that. So now, when you come out of edit mode back into object mode, you'll see that each of these are individual objects, but they all have their origin at the center over here and not where it intuitively should be. We're going to fix that, but before that, I'm going to move all of these over here, and I'm going to set this guy's origin, the main body. I'm going to set its origin to center of mass volume. For the other ones, we're not going to do that, so don't do that just yet. Once we do that, let's go ahead and move this over to 0, 0, 0 on everything. It just makes it a little easier if things are symmetrical about the axes. So go ahead and do that. Now we're ready to actually start moving our objects in and lining them up. So before we do any of that, what we want to do to make our life a little bit easier is set the origin of these objects to their pivot points. So for a wing, that would be this circular hole over here. And then for the stabilizer or elevator, actually, I don't know, elevon, I don't know, whatever the terminology is. For those, it's going to be this circular or cylindrical feature over here. So to do that, what we're going to do is click on a wing. Let's use that as an example to begin with. Go into edit mode. And what we want to do is select all of the faces that comprise this cylinder. what we can do to select them all is either just hit W until you go into this little circular select thing, and then you can just kind of drag. So if you hold Shift and keep Shift held while you navigate the workspace, you can just kind of move your mouse around and select all of these faces. Um, you can do it manually if you want to. That's kind of a pain in the ass. Another way of doing it, if you don't want to do it this way, is using the regular select mode, hold Shift and Control, and then just move from one point to another. You see that? So it selects all the faces in between. So if you just hold Shift and Control and keep it pressed, keep Shift and Control pressed the entire time, you will be able to select multiple faces like that, and as long as you select all of them. So once you do that, Shift S and move the cursor to selected. So now the cursor is right there in the middle of that cylindrical face. Let's get out of edit mode and go back into object mode. And now I'm going to set the origin of the object to the 3D cursor. Now, the reason we want to do this is so that when we rotate things or move things around, it uses that point as the frame of reference. We're going to do the exact same thing over to this wing. So let's just move it so I can see it a little bit better. Edit mode, hold Shift and Control, select all the faces, Shift S, cursor is selected, get out of edit mode, set the origin to 3D cursor. So both our wings are ready to go now. I'm going to do the exact same process for the stabilizer here. And it doesn't really matter what circular thing you choose. You just need the feature to be circular about this axis, right? So the axis passing through the cylinder. So it doesn't matter. My only advice would be whatever you choose, just make it consistent. So if I'm choosing, Jesus, this is hard. Let's get this away from all the other objects for a second. All right, that should be a little easier to deal with. Yeah, so if I'm choosing this, like this surface, I'll just make sure to choose the same surface when I do it on the other guy. So I'll just go with this one because it's easy to see. Shift S, cursor to selected, get out of edit mode into object mode, and then set the origin of the object to the 3D cursor. We're going to do the exact same thing for this guy. So feel free to fast forward if you want, or you can listen to me ramble about stuff. And 3D cursor. Great. So now our individual objects are ready to be positioned on the main body. But where the heck do I position them on the main body, right? So that's a good valid question. So at this point, we are going to start adding armatures. And now again, this is where it gets a little a little bit of a a dirty, quick way to rig this up. There's probably better ways of doing it. I just like to do it like this for easy, quick animations. So, make of that what you will. So what I'm going to do is reset my origin back, reset my 3D cursor back to the origin of the world. So Shift S, cursor to world origin. And the reason we're going to do that is because our main body is also lined up with the world origin. I'm going to hit Shift A. I'm going to add an armature. So now this is going to be called our main body bone. So I'm going to call it MBB, right? Because the main body and basically everything is going to be parented to this guy. So if we want to move the plane, like the entire plane, all we got to do is move this one bone. I'm going to rotate it about the Y so that it is facing 90 degrees. But now you may think, hey, where did the bone go? Right? It's right here, but it's hidden by the aircraft. So to fix that, what we want to do is make sure to have the bone selected, go into this little stick figure guy, this menu, viewport display in front. So just check the box for in front. So what that'll do is it'll show you the bone in front of whatever object that may be otherwise occluding its visibility. So now, we can see the bone easily. Let's go ahead and scale it on the, let's scale it up a little bit so that it's just a little bit bigger. Great. So now this bone is ready to go. We don't need to really worry about it right now, so I'm going to hide it. It's still over here. It's just hidden away. All right, so let's start adding bones to pivot points on the plane so that we can move our actual objects to those bones. And again, you don't have to do it that way. I've just found it to be a little easier to do it that way. So these two little studs here, right? These are the pivot points for the wings. I don't know how well I'm showing them, but it's essentially this one over here for the right wing and this one over here for the left wing. A little hard to see, but that is where the wings need to pivot. And the reason it's like that is because the Lego model is actually it's functional in real life. Like you can actually attach these wings and they will sweep like the real F-14 does. So let's click on the main body, go into edit mode, and similar to before, what we want to do is use our 3D cursor as a ferry again to like move things around to positions. So to do that, I'm going to select the circular face. I'm going to do it the exact same way as I did before. Shift and Control are held, and I'm just going to keep selecting faces so that it selects all the faces in between them. And this might take a little bit of navigation to figure out because it's in the middle, but it's surprisingly not as hard as I had expected it to be. It might be for you, so I apologize for that. Once you have them selected, you hit Shift S, cursor to selected, and at this point, what we can do is get out of edit mode, Shift A, add an armature. We're going to do the exact same thing for the other pivot point over here, so that's this stud. And I'm going to select, oh, there we go, that actually helped quite a bit. Shift S, cursor is selected. Oh, geez, that didn't work. Shift S, cursor is selected. Why is that not working? Oh, it's because I have all the other ones selected. Never mind. My apologies there. I just had the other one selected too, so the cursor just went to the center of the two pivot points. But let's do that again. There we go. So that looks more like it. So Shift A, armature, and now our armatures are in here. What we're going to want to do before we do anything is, again, just click on these bones, go into the stick figure thingy, and check the box for in front, just so that they're visible. Otherwise, things get a little hard to navigate. So now our armatures are in the right place, but they're a little big. We don't need them to be this big. So I'm just going to grab the two ends, or I went through that really quick. I grab the two bones, and then I go into edit mode, make sure the two top thingies are selected, um, grab them and move them down the z-axis just around here. This should be fine, just so that they don't take up too much, you know, space and make things invisible. Now we are ready to move our wings to their positions. So you might remember earlier, we set the origin of our wing to this point over here. Now that's gonna help. That's gonna help make things consistent. So um, if I select this bone, go into edit mode, select the base of the bone, Shift S, cursor to selected. Now the cursor is at the base of that very bone. I'm going to select this object now, and I'm going to say Shift S, selection to cursor. And look at that. It is almost perfectly in line. We'll line it up a little bit better. We'll do a better job of that. But the important part is that at least along the cylindrical axis, it is lined up and in the right spot. We can verify that by getting into the model here and just sort of visually making sure it lines up. And it does. I've tested this method quite a bit, so it's good. Similarly, we're going to select this bone, go to edit mode, select the base, Shift S, cursor to selected, get out of edit mode, select the wing, Shift S, selection to cursor. Great. So now our wings are generally lined up, but there's a little bit of tweaking left to go. You might see that it's clipping into the bottom intake thingy a little bit, but the important part is that it's clipping equally on both sides. So we just select both the wings and get ourselves a good little viewpoint here. Grab on the z-axis, GZ, and move it up. So we can kind of eyeball this. It does not have to be perfect because unless your camera is going to be set right here, scrutinizing every angle, it's not gonna it'll look fine. So our wings are ready to go. This is very exciting. So just to give you a sense of what that looks like, um, this is oops, this is intended to be the motion of the wing. It's gonna move along its pivot like that, and yeah, it looks good. So our next step is going to be to set up the exact same kind of rig, but for the stabilizers, elevators, ailerons, you name it. I guess they're all of them on this plane. I don't know. But same principle. And the pivot points for these are going to be this Technic pin right here. Again, it's not an individual object, it's just a part of the main body because that's how it was exported, but the same principle applies. If I go into edit mode, what you want to do is just choose the same sort of surface that is symmetrical about this cylinder's axis. Whatever is easy for you. I found that just choosing these two things, this seems to work and it works well. So I just do this, but you can choose something inside if you wanted to. If you can even choose these ones on the outside. Actually, let's do that. That might be a little bit better. So choose this, just choose all the faces on this circular thingy, Shift S, cursor is selected, Shift A, armature. Similarly on the other side, choose all of these circular faces, Shift S, cursor is selected, get out of edit mode, Shift A, armature. So now we're gonna move these bones, but we're gonna move them in a specific way. So let's just go ahead and click in front for both of them first, because uh, we want to make sure that we can see them. Before we continue, these bones for the wings, I'm just gonna name them so that we can keep track of what's what in the tree up there. So I'm gonna call this wing bone right, and I'm gonna call this wing bone left. And I'm also gonna hide them because we don't need them right now. All right, so let's select both of our stabilizer bones. Once with them both selected, hit tab to go to edit mode, select the top two thingies, scale them down just a little bit. That should be good. And now I'm gonna rotate them about the x-axis, but I want them to face, basically I just need them to face opposite directions, and we'll go into why in a second when we get to animating, but you want them to face opposite directions. Now, if it helps to, have them face opposite directions outwards because it's easier to see, whatever really works for you. Um, there's no like right or wrong here. So I'm just going to do it this way because it'll be a little easier for me to see. Now, select this bone, go into edit mode, select the base, Shift S, cursor is selected. Once you're done doing that, select the object, the stabilizer, Shift S, selection to cursor. So again, we have lined up the cylindrical parts. We might need to tweak other things a little bit, but we'll get to that. Same principle on the other side. Go into edit mode for the bone, select the base, Shift S, cursor to selected, select this object, selection to cursor. So we are almost good to go. Let's go ahead and fix the alignment. It looks to be pretty damn good. I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna go into wireframe just to make sure. Uh, I honestly I think it's perfect, which is weird. But if it isn't for you, just move it along the y-axis and line it up. But it looks good for this, so I'm just gonna keep it. Okay, so now we have successfully positioned all of our objects for the F-14. The only part that is left to do is to parent the right items to the right bones, and then get ready to actually animate it. So at this point, I'm going to make sure all of my bones are visible. And let's get to parenting. So the general strategy for parenting is that individual objects are going to get parented to their individual bones. This bone is going to, each of these individual bones are going to get parented to the main bone, and then the main body is also going to get parented to the main bone. So if you want to move the aircraft, you just move the main bone. And if you want to move any of these control surfaces or make the wings sweep, you just actuate these individual bones, but they will still move in relation with this main bone here. So let's start off from the top down or a bottom up approach. I think is that maybe I don't know, whatever. Let's start off. I'm going to select the wing, select the bone, Control P, object, keep transformation. Similarly on this one, select the wing, select the bone, Control P, object, keep transformation. Same thing for the elevator, Control P, and then I select this last one, Control P. Now, if I move this, it moves the wing as well, which is great. But I needed to move in a specific axis, right? So like if you look at the plane right now, it really only should move along the z-axis. And now you might be asking, what if my plane is tilted? Well, we'll get to that. That's a very good question, and we'll get to that once we are done parenting. So now we have all the individual bones paired, connected to their individual objects. Let's connect the main body to the main bone now. Same principle, Control P, object group transform. And now I'm going to connect all of these bones, or paired all of these bones, these small ones, to this big one. So let's select this guy, Control P, object keep transform. Select this, Control P. Again, select the bone first, Control P, and Control P. Cool. Just quick note: when you're parenting something to the to something else, you select the child first, and then you select the parent, and then you hit Control P. I don't know if I made that clear enough in the beginning, but yeah, you select the child, then the parent, and then hit Control P. So if assuming we have done our job correctly, if I select this bone and I grab it, everything should move, and it does. We are good to go, right? And let's get back to that question now. What if my plane is tilted? What if I can't rely on the global, world axes to actuate my individual bones? Well, we can just rely on the local axes of the bones. That's why I chose to use armatures instead of just directly parenting this object, each of these objects to the main body. You can do it that way too. Like I could parent this stabilizer directly to this, and then use the stabilizers uh, you know, inbuilt or innate axes to move it, but it's kind of a pain in the ass, and it just makes it easier to have everything stick to a bone, at least for me. So choose what works for you. So now let's go into moving these control surfaces just a little bit, just to make things a little bit clearer. I'm gonna rotate the main body on the y-axis by some amount there. Let's get it up in the sky. I say sky, and then like there. And then I'm going to rotate it about the x-axis as well, just a little bit. Oops, jeez. There we go. So how do you move these surfaces, right? What we're going to do is just use the local axes of the bones. So if I click on this bone and I hit R and I hit Z, you can see that it's using the global z-axis, and it doesn't really look right. But if I hit Z again, it uses the local z-axis of the bone. So let's go through that step again. Hit R to rotate, Z, and then Z again. So now it uses the local axis of the bone. So if I want to have my wings swept in, RZZ, and then I found 45 degrees to work really well. That's from the actual Lego design. Like I've found that 45 is a good angle for swept in, and then 4 degrees from its initial position. So this being the initial position, RZZ4. This is a good position for it to be swept out because it just has the wings hang back or swept back a little bit, and it just looks better than having them, straight up like it initially was. So let's have them swept in for now. I'm gonna hit RZZ 45. Let's click on the other guy, RZZ. You might have to do minus 45. Yeah, it is minus 45. So yeah, just make sure your signs are right. So now our wings are swept in, but they are still in line with our model. So this is just a very quick and easy way. Now you might be wondering, why did I have you orient these bones facing away from each other? Well, if you're making your plane turn, you want these surfaces to move in opposite directions. So if I select both the bones here, R, Z, Z, and I move them, you can see that they move by the same angle, but in opposite directions. So if I'm making my plane turn left here, I would just have, I'd have it set up like this, right? Is it that way? No, I think it's the other way. Yeah, I think this is, or whatever it is. I don't know. I'm not an aerospace engineer here. So that's why I have you set it the opposite way. But if you're trying to move them both in the same direction, you're gonna have to do it, manually. So RZZ on this bone, RZZ on this bone, so that they both are facing down. But again, the same principle applies to any of these bones. You just move them along their local axes, and you should be good to go. So you're here for animations. So let's do a quick one. I'm gonna I'm gonna animate this. Let's give this a keyframe. Let's give it a location, rotation, and scale keyframe. And then let's say at frame 60, I'm gonna give this RCZ a value of 45. Let's give it 41 actually. And then RCZ minus 41. And then location, rotation, and scale. Location, rotation. You can even just give it a location or a rotation keyframe. You don't have to give it a scale and location. Rotation is just fine. So there we go. So now we have a little bit of a teeny tiny animation of our wings opening up. And you can go crazy with this. You can have the plane moving, you can do all sorts of stuff. Um, and just make sure you're animating and you're actuating these about their local axes. So that's about it. That's how you rig up this F-14. If you have any questions, just drop a comment. I'll try my best to keep a good practice of looking at these comments and replying to them. Otherwise, reach out to me however you can, and I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you for watching.